Not many people know this, but ancient books banned by official circles tell what really happened in the last days of Adam and Eve. Texts like The Life of Adam and Eve, also known as the Apocalypse of Moses, share impressive details about the first man's death, the angel's lament, and a spiritual secret passed to his son Seth. What you're about to hear might completely change how you see creation, the fall, and humanity's redemption. Watch until the end, because these facts are so striking, they'll keep you thinking for days. If you believe there's much more to learn about humanity's spiritual history, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Before we start, tell me in the comments, have you heard about these apocryphal texts? I really want to know your thoughts. According to these writings, Adam became seriously ill 930 years after his creation. This was the time God had set. Eve, already very old, felt something spiritual approaching. Desperate, she asked her son Seth to go to Eden's gates, which were still visible but guarded by angels with flaming swords, to get the oil of mercy, a sacred substance that could heal Adam. Seth hurried there with his sister, but near the garden, angels stopped him, saying, "The time for healing has passed. Eternal rest shall come." Adam, on his deathbed, knew his time had come. He gathered his children and began to cry, not because he feared death. He cried remembering how he had lost Eden and brought suffering to humanity through his choice. The texts say all creation grew sad, and even animals came to the cave where he lay silently. Eve, by his side, kept asking for forgiveness, saying, "Lord, my mistake was great, but your mercy is greater." It was painful, but also hopeful, as something was about to be shown. Then something happened. According to the Apocalypse of Moses, light filled the air around Adam, and 3 angels came down from heaven, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. They stood before Adam and announced, "Your soul will go before the Most High's throne, but first you'll see your children's future." Adam then had a vision. He saw wars, idol worship, betrayals, but also prophets, covenants, and finally a shining crucified man. Through tears he said, "Blessed be what is to come, for he will save what I destroyed." After this vision, Adam asked the angels, "Who was that crucified and glorified man?" The angel Michael answered, "He is God's son, who will come in human form from your son Seth's family line. He will defeat the serpent that tricked you and will reopen paradise's door." Adam then praised God, even in his sorrow. At that moment, the angels said his soul would soon be collected, but kept in the 3rd heaven until creation's complete redemption. This wasn't just a man's death, it fulfilled a heavenly plan. According to the Book of Jubilees, when Adam died, all earth's creatures went quiet, waters stopped flowing, wind ceased, and nature showed deep respect. Angels took his soul to God's throne, where it was honorably received, not for winning, but for admitting his mistake and keeping faith until the end. Eve, crying, held his hand until his last breath and then collapsed, saying, "Lord, I am the cause, but also a servant of your will." She knew her time was close too. Eve lived only 6 days longer than Adam. During that time, she fasted, prayed, gathered with her children, and begged them to always honor the Creator. She told in detail what really happened in Eden according to the Apocalypse of Moses. Eve explained that the serpent came to her not just with words, but looking like an angel, and by trusting too much in beauty and brightness, she was fooled. She warned her children, "Not everything shiny is light, and not every silence comes from God." This was her final lesson before she died. When Eve died, the same 3 angels returned. But this time a sweet smell filled the place, as if all heaven bowed to that woman's humility. Her soul was carried away with honor, and the children prepared both bodies with respect and awe. The burial site was called Land of Promise, and some traditions say it would be where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would later be buried. After the couple died, the angel told Seth, "The cycle is closed, but the promise remains. Stay watchful." Seth, Adam and Eve's most righteous son, became the family leader after his parents died. The apocryphal texts say angels directly taught him, and he saw visions in his dreams. One showed a ladder going up to heaven with angels going up and down, and at the top a throne surrounded by unreachable light. Seth understood that humans would be on earth for a long time, but the promise made to Adam was still alive. He then started what became known as the Book of the Words of Adam, a record of his father's advice, visions, and prophecies. These records passed from generation to generation, but many were destroyed over time. Some say parts of this book were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in caves to protect ancient wisdom. The content includes spiritual instructions, warnings about Cain's sons, and direct mentions of the Messiah. An amazing passage states, "A man will come to restore the stolen breath. He will be born of a virgin and will crush the serpent's head." This prophecy, written centuries before any official biblical text, confirms that the redemption plan had already been announced in humanity's earliest days. Seth's descendants lived in high areas. According to the Book of Jubilees, staying away from Cain's descendants, they were called sons of God because they were faithful to the Most High. During this time, the first spiritual school started, where young people learned about the fall, Eden, angels, and the promise of restoration. Tradition said Adam's wisdom had been sealed in 7 stones, each holding a teaching about creation and the fall. People believed these stones were buried, waiting for the right time to be shown again. But as generations passed, the signs began to fade. Men forgot Eve's words, the angel's warnings, and Adam's visions. The world again started down a dark path, but there was always a small group who remembered. There was always someone who quietly kept Eden's echo. These men and women carried the seed of truth, and according to the oldest traditions, when the world is about to repeat the beginning's mistakes, these guardians will rise, for the cycle only ends when man finally understands what he has lost. The Book of Jubilees mentions that before dying, Seth gathered his children and warned them about corruption coming to the world. He predicted that many would stop walking with God, that agreements would be broken, and that Cain's sons would join with fallen beings, corrupting creation. But he also stated that at the right time, the promised descendant would come to fix everything. He said, "Keep my father Adam's words, for what he saw was not just the past, but also the end." This started the oral tradition that kept the hope of salvation alive for generations. The tradition continues in the Book of Enoch, where we read that some angels who watched Adam's body after death were the same ones who later reported the fallen angels who joined with men's daughters. That means there was a direct link between Adam's death and the chaos before the flood. According to Enoch, the righteous people of those days kept Adam's words like one keeps the last breath of a promise. One striking passage says, "When the earth forgets its first father, the heavens will move again." Some Gnostic writings, like the Revelation of Adam, though controversial, also show this expectation. In them, Adam appears not just as the first man, but as one who carried hidden divine knowledge that would one day be restored by a son of light. Though these sources aren't part of biblical tradition, they show how even ancient groups believed something lost in Eden still needed to be found. A spiritual battle that started with the fall and would only end when the truth was fully shown. Over time, these texts were silenced. Many were hidden, burned, or called heresy, but pieces survived, and today they let us rebuild the forgotten story of Adam and Eve's death. What we see isn't just a story about two humans, but about destiny, regret, promises, and restoration. Adam didn't die hopeless. He died hopeful. Eve didn't leave in shame. She left with faith, and the angels didn't abandon them. They guided them with honor. For Eden was closed with a sword, but will be reopened with blood. And that prophecy is still happening. Over the ages, Seth's family line became corrupt when it mixed with Cain's descendants, exactly as Adam had predicted before his death. The Book of Enoch states that God's sons looked at men's daughters and wanted them, leading to the Nephilim's birth. Adam had already sensed this in his vision before death. He warned Seth, "Don't take for yourselves what shines outside, but holds death inside." This mixing of family lines and essences opened spiritual doors that would forever change humanity's fate and pointed to judgment. But not all were corrupted. A small group stayed faithful, keeping the teachings of Adam, Eve, and Seth. They lived high in the mountains, far from cities, and were known as the children of silence. They said few words, but their lives were marked by prayer, fasting, and studying ancient writings. One of them, named Enos, had a vision where he saw Adam and Eve in glory, walking again in paradise. Smiling, he asked the heavens what that meant and heard, "In the end, those who fell first will be the first to enter." The ancient prophet said the story of Adam and Eve wasn't just about the beginning, but also showed the end. Just as Eden closed, it will also open. Just as man lost God's presence, one day he will walk with him again. And that faith kept hope alive in dark times. In Noah's days, many righteous people still knew parts of Adam's teachings in the Book of Jubilees. They say Noah carried writings from the first patriarchs, saving not just physical life, but the spiritual memory of creation. And now, thousands of years later, that memory is coming back. Pieces of these texts have been found. Scholars are finding again what tradition tried to erase, and most impressive is that everything points to one truth. The story of Adam and Eve is still going on. Their mistakes marked us, but their faith and regret also gave us a map. They fell, yes, but they died waiting for the Redeemer. They failed, but they ended up believing. And maybe that's what God most wanted to show us, that redemption doesn't start with being perfect, but with coming back. In some Eastern traditions kept for centuries outside Western circles, there are stories that Noah took Adam's bones and put them on Mount Golgotha, the same place where, according to the New Testament, Jesus was crucified. Church fathers like Origen and Epiphanius mention this tradition, which has deep meaning, the first man buried in the same place where the last Adam would beat death. This connects the beginning and the end, the fall and the redemption, and shows us that from the very start God was already making the way back. The meaning grows stronger when we understand that Eve was the first to be tricked, but also the first to get the promise of a Savior. In a passage from the life of Adam and Eve, she cries to God saying, "If I can't return to the garden, let my children see your face again." And the answer is clear. From your seed will come one who will crush the serpent's head. This is where the Messiah promise starts, a pledge made not in a temple but in tears, in the land where the pain began. Eve fell, but she also believed, and her faith has lasted through centuries like a hidden flame. As these facts are found again, more people think humanity's history is about to close a cycle, the same cycle that began with the expulsion from Eden, the pain of the first morning, and the breaking of the first agreement. But if Adam and Eve's death opened the doors to exile, the coming of the one they predicted would open the doors to return, not to the same garden, but to a new one, a place made not by human hands but by God, where there will be no more lies, no more pain, no more separation. And all of that started with the forgotten story of the first fall. Now we know that Adam and Eve's death wasn't just the end of two lives. It was the seal of a spiritual promise that spans the scriptures, the Apocrypha, and the hearts of those looking for truth. God let them fall, but he never left them. The angels cried for them, yes, but they also honored them. And though the world may have forgotten for a time, the heavens haven't forgotten. Adam's voice still calls out, Eve's faith still motivates, and the Creator's plan goes on. The question is, are we listening to the echoes of this story, or do we continue as if it had never started? The ancient texts say that humanity's final restoration will depend on recognizing where the break began. You can't heal a wound without remembering where it started, and humanity's wound began with a choice, but also with regret. Adam admitted his flaw. Eve cried for what she had lost. They didn't die fighting but broken, and maybe because of that, heaven received them with honor. The problem is that by forgetting this story, we stop learning from it, and without spiritual memory, humanity repeats its fall. But there is hope. The ancient prophets left clues, and the Gospels showed the fulfillment. Eve's descendant would crush the serpent, not with strength but with sacrifice. Adam had lost paradise by reaching for the forbidden fruit. Christ would open the way by stretching his hands on the cross. One died, driving man away from the tree of life. The other died to reopen the path to it. Everything was connected, and by finding the apocryphal texts again, we see that the redemption plan didn't start with Moses, but in the hearts of those who first fell. The real beauty of this story isn't in the fall, but in what God did with it. He changed guilt into hope, shame into promise, and silence into redemption. Adam and Eve left a hurt world, but they planted the seed of faith, and today that seed grows in every person who understands that redemption isn't just a religious idea. It's a return to our original purpose. No matter how far we've strayed, the path back was made with tears, blood, and promises, and it all began there in that final breath when heaven cried but didn't give up on the earth. And now it's up to us to continue the story. For Adam and Eve's echoes still sound in our decisions, in our searches, and in our hunger for meaning. They fell, but they were accepted. They made mistakes, but they believed. And today the same invitation stands before us, to remember, to return, and to live with an eternal purpose. Phrase of the day: the lost Eden has not been forgotten. It simply waits for those who still believe in the promise. If this story has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, like the video, turn on notifications, and comment from which city you're watching until the next video.